Okay, well, welcome everyone. I'm Diane Monig, the Director of Programs here at the ARC of Northern Virginia. Thank you for joining us for today's Transition Lunch and Learn. We are so happy to have Amanda Mendez with us. She's the Director of Rehabilitative Services with the Driver Rehabilitation Center of Excellence. We've met a couple of times at resource fairs, and so happy to have her here to share this information because we get questions a lot from families around what their children want to drive, knowing if that's the right thing and what resources are there. So just as a reminder, I'm going to send out the recording of this to families and then also the slides that she shared and then any other resources that come up today. So with that, I'll turn it over to Amanda. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Yeah, so I can start with a little bit of background on myself and then our company. So I am an OT practitioner by trade, and then just recently have acquired my Certified Driving Rehabilitation Specialist certification. So that's a nationally recognized certification. And really what that does, it's through our organization. It's called Association for Driver Rehab Specialists. And I'll have that on my resource page at the very end, but it's aded.net, so ADED.net, and that's where you can go and locate a certified driving rehab specialist based off of your location and your needs. So that's a really good resource. But through that organization, we are equipped as therapists and practitioners with the most current evidence-based research when it comes to driving and any medical diagnosis that you may have. So my background, I've worked in acute rehab. I did physical medicine and rehab mainly in skilled nursing facilities, home health, and I even did marketing for acute rehab hospitals. But ultimately, the goal of mine and the reason why I got into, occupational therapy was working with clients one-on-one and seeing that progress and really just helping people. So somehow I ended up in the driving realm, which I think is it's very unique. And, sometimes when I tell people I do that, they're like, no way, I cannot get in the car with someone. And I know that dynamic as a parent too. And I have a few kids that are younger, but I know that will come. And thankfully I'll be able to help them with that process. But most parents and, caregivers do not feel comfortable doing that, or the dynamic, can be challenging. So this is my passion now. And I've actually since I've started here at this company, Driver Rehabilitation Center of Excellence. So we're a small business. But my niche has been working with the more novice drivers and clients with intellectual disabilities and ASD. So, and what we do is it's a more modified approach to that learning how to drive process. So it's not just a certified driving instructor. That's not what we do here. We are more therapeutic, and we think holistically, and we're thinking about functionality of driving. So not just driving to learn how to drive and check off skills on a checklist, but equipping this person with skills to have them become a good, safe, defensive driver. Can they drive across, not just in the city or within 5 miles of your home location, but a good driver that will actually translate to multiple settings. So, and then we're really sensitive to that person's diagnosis and what comes along with it. So not everyone takes a typical learning path, as we all know, I'm sure. So that's a little bit background on me. And then this company was started in 2016, and it's a veteran-owned small business. But we've grown significantly just in the past 2 years that I've been here. We've opened a few more locations. So we have one in Ohio. We have a location in Fredericksburg, Virginia. And then we are working out of Richmond and more recently, Williamsburg, Virginia. So those are our few locations that we have, and hopefully more to come. So I will go ahead and get started kind of on the PowerPoint, and please feel free to, ask a question as it arises, or like Diane said, type it in the chat. I am very cool with either of those options. So as I said earlier, so I am now a certified driver rehabilitation specialist. So at DRCE, we employ CDRSs, occupational therapists, occupational therapy assistants. And so we hold ourselves up to that standard. Like I said, it's not just it's not Joe's driving school. We are OT practitioners by trade. So, and then along with that, the CDRS role, it has that highest credentialing, most, evidence-based research that we're applying to our training. And something very unique about our business here, and it's actually the only business model like ours in the whole country that we know of. We'd have the CDRSs and the OT practitioners on the clinical side. And then we also have a shop in the back of our facility where we have highly trained NMEDA is like the National Mobility Equipment Dealers Association, and they're all quality assurance certified technicians to work on vehicles. So if we see a client and it is recommended that they have or need auto adaptive equipment to be independent with driving, then our shop and our technicians in the back can actually modify that vehicle to allow that person, to be independent with driving. So it's pretty neat because in the real world application, you have driving rehab specialists, and they're very separate than those mobility dealers, the people who install that equipment. So here we have it all under one roof. So it only provides for good continuity of care. The client is can get the services done a lot quicker. And, everyone's communicating, whereas typically you see it, a lot of different parties communicating. Someone may not be on the right, schedule. The equipment may get installed incorrectly. You don't have the therapist there. And so this is really, really a unique model that we have here, and we pride ourselves on that. So like I said, we do our clinical side, and the CDRS is the OT practitioners. We do driver evaluations or assessments, and our driver evaluations, it gets broken down into two portions, and I'll go a little further into that, but a clinical and a behind the wheel portion. We also do what's called driver training. So if someone, if we see that someone has the potential to be independent with driving, but just needs a little bit of training, modified, whatever that looks like, we offer those services as well. And then we also do our own case management, which I think is really, that's something that we really pride ourselves on too, because some of these cases are not just a quick, one and done. So we have to manage that case and really inform the client on, what that plan of care is and make sure it's being met. And we're always available, for anything that could arise. And then we do the mobility solutions as well. So like I said, we install, we have our technicians back there. We have certified welders who make custom parts sometimes for the vehicle. So that's really unique too. And then we work a lot with Mobility Works in Richmond. So we do vehicle consultations and fittings, and we also facilitate the sales because there's not a one size fits all. So someone who is in a power wheelchair potentially and, very tall, the wheelchair is very high, that's not going to fit into every vehicle. So it's our job to know what those measurements are and what exact conversions could be appropriate for this client. So we do that stuff as well. And I like to send this slide to, we have kind of a cut sheet to print it out, and it has some of this information on it, but what is an appropriate referral? So overall, if you have any medical diagnosis, any medical condition that could impact your driving, then it's probably an appropriate referral. But here's just a few laid out so that you may be able to kind of tie those together and say, oh, they may be a good referral for DRCE. So just going into some of the cognitive impairments and disabilities, ASD, learning disabilities, strokes, brain injuries, dementia, and then anything physical. So you have your spinal cord injury, any limb loss, amputee, MS, ALS. So a lot of physical comorbidities with those. So when we get a referral or a client, reaches out to us, hey, I'm looking to undergo a driving evaluation. We require a doctor's referral, and we have that referral form on our webpage. It's just a one-page form. And really what we're doing is we want a physician to sign off saying, hey, this person's medically stable to get behind the wheel with you. And what that means is, we want to know that someone hasn't had any recent seizures or maybe psychiatric episodes, because we're risking our lives and getting into the vehicle with them. So that's what we require. And then we do intake paperwork, and then we will see someone. So as far as the driving evaluation, it's again not a one size fits all. So it's based off of, that referral, that diagnosis, what that person's needs are. Are they going through the DMV? Are they under medical review process? Are they a novice driver with no permit? So I have here the evaluations. So our typical evaluation is $800. And then we have what's called a potential to drive evaluation for $650. So the potential to drive is a pre-permit evaluation. So those are the ones, maybe you guys might be more interested in here today. That's someone, should I even, have my child pursue this process? I don't know if it's right. Can they even drive? Maybe we got behind the wheel in the parking lot and something happened. So I don't know if this is a good idea. So that's where we would do that more modified evaluation. And we do standardized assessments. So if you look a little further down, the step one is that clinical piece. So we'll do all, the therapist, it's up to the therapist's discretion and based off of the diagnosis, but we will pick certain standardized assessments, assessing all those different, those skills. So physical abilities, cognitive functioning, road knowledge, vision. So we do a basic vision screen, but as far as Virginia DMV, they have very strict requirements. So we do a very basic screen. If we note anything further, we'll refer out. And then reaction time. So we'll do those items in that potential to drive. And then we'll also take someone out as a passenger and do exercises out on the road. So we're looking for coachability, carryover of any techniques we're implementing in that day, in that session. And then what we'll do is, give the results and our recommendations at the end, as well as any resources and kind of guidance on the process. And then for the typical evaluation, as well as you see listed above there are high-tech driving evaluations. So those are just for more involved cases, maybe more physical limitations to where someone needs to drive with called like drive-by-wire system. So that's more of a lot of electrical integration into a vehicle, maybe driving with a joystick. So that's more specialized training, hence the cost is a little higher for that type of evaluation. And there's a lot of on intake will determine which one is appropriate for each client and let them know, hey, it's going to be probably this much because of what you got going on. And then the second piece of the evaluation is that behind the wheel. So if someone has a permit, then we will actually put that person behind the wheel. And then I think, and I'll kind of go into, we have a fleet of vehicles as well with different equipment in it and some just typical. So we'll select vehicles based off of that person's needs too. And they're all equipped with passenger safety brakes. So yes, sometimes I'm over there pressing the brake, but at least, that's why we have it. That's why we're the professionals and we're trained on that equipment. So some of the results that you may see of these assessments, could include just resume driving as needed. So that's someone that came with a license already, or if they don't have their permit yet, maybe they are appropriate to continue with just obtaining the learner's permit. So things went pretty well, just continue as typical. Or you might see a drive with limitations. So I put the example there, no nighttime driving, or maybe no highway, or stay within a certain geographical radius of your location. And then sometimes it's determined. So sometimes with these potential evaluations or just our comprehensive driving evals, we see that driver training may be appropriate. So like I said, that's something else that we do, and that's an additional cost. And we will let you know what that looks like. We'll say, hey, based off of today's assessments, maybe it's recommended, or we think you would benefit from like 10 hours of driver training with us, so we can implement and, modify your training, implement certain strategies, compensatory techniques, and that could be physical or cognitively, and to allow you to be more independent. But we think that you could get there, but with this type of training. And then another one would be the need for auto adaptive equipment. So someone with maybe a physical limitation could be independent, getting in and out of the vehicle and operating the vehicle with primary controls, gas, brake, steering, but maybe with equipment. So along with equipment usually comes training as well. And then again, we could modify it here in our shop. Sometimes it comes to, that we recommend to stop driving or cessation of driving. And with that, we pride ourselves on not just jumping the gun and going straight to, nope, you can't drive. We like to see people earlier, and this is maybe more towards our older drivers in that community, but we like to see people ahead of time, or maybe a new diagnosis of Alzheimer's or something like that. We like to see people as early as we can, because we want to keep people as independent as possible, as long as possible when it comes to driving. We know that that is it's like a rite of passage. It's this last straw of independence. And so our goal is to keep people on the road as long as possible. So that's never an easy conversation. And then something else that kind of goes with the very first, maybe resume driving or obtaining the learner's permit. Another option could be pursue life skills. So that will be a recommendation sometimes in that potential to drive assessment as well. Maybe not pursue permit yet, or maybe return for an assessment, but in the meantime, pursue life skills. So just allowing someone to become a little more independent with life, managing their cooking, managing recipes, managing their finances, or learning how to take a bus, read and follow a bus route and a schedule. All those are kind of like prereqs or precursors to learning how to drive. So maybe it's appropriate that someone work on those skills first and then return and still pursue the driving process. We don't just like to see people and say bye. Like, we follow people for years sometimes, if it's appropriate. But just so people know, it is an option. And then here's just some pictures too. I think it's always neat if you've never seen, and I didn't even know this equipment existed prior to getting into the driving field in OT. So here's just some pictures of auto adaptive equipment. So if it's determined after an assessment that you need auto adaptive equipment, we have a variety of equipment here in our vehicle. So these pictures are specifically from our vehicles and our fleet. And so it's neat too, because we've been fortunate enough to work with these manufacturers of this equipment and have a lot of demos installed in our vehicles so people could utilize. In other independent CDRS locations, you may see that they only have one piece of equipment to trial, and they may recommend that one piece, or they may recommend a piece of equipment that they haven't even used with a client. And we try to do it the right way. Say, hey, we've actually worked with this client, they've utilized this equipment, they're confident with this equipment, and then we proceeded with install. And so ultimately we know they're as safe as they can be with that equipment in their right setup that's most conducive to them, and safe, and ultimately safe. So currently we have 10 training vehicles available. So like I mentioned about the high-tech assessment, that's maybe a little bit more involved. So we have 2 high-tech vans and they have 2 different high-tech systems. So that's actually really amazing. You will not see that. And there are probably maybe only a few other states, I think, in the country that have these options as far as the high-tech equipment goes. Like I said, it's very specialized training. And then we have just other vans that are converted. So it means they're wheelchair accessible. And then there's 2 different types of conversions that you'll see. You'll see a ramp that folds out and then a ramp that's in the floor and it comes out and then lowers down. So that's for someone who is a permanent wheelchair user. Those are just a little more conducive for that type of client. You know, like weather permitting, they're unloading in their vehicle. They don't have to worry about the weather, and there's a lot of different solutions as far as like transferring over or driving from your wheelchair. So we have a few vans that are converted for those users, those wheelchair users. And then we have SUVs and sedans, and they can be either typically used, or with that equipment. So all that equipment that you see there, that can be removed and you can operate the vehicle typically as well. And here's some more pictures there. Diane, can you guys see my mouse moving?
Yes, we can.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Because I was going to try to point too, so I can show you guys. So this one up here, so this is a Braun conversion. So that's just a manufacturer of the conversion. So you may have seen this on wheelchair accessible vehicles before, Braun Ability. So that means it was Braun is the company who converted the actual vehicle. They lowered the floor and put the ramp in. So this is a converted vehicle here. This is I'll go to the right. This is a hand control. So you would, and this is kind of the most basic form of auto adaptive equipment that you're going to get. So it starts in this basic mechanical version and it goes all the way to this high tech where everything's electrically integrated and you're operating it by just a joystick. So this is a typical hand control. You would push forward and this rod presses into the brake pedal. Sorry. So the rod will press into the brake there and engage the brake. And this is the pivot point here, but you would pull this handle back and then this rod will engage the gas. So that's how someone would operate the vehicle. You push this forward and then pull it back. And then you have them steering as well. And this is an example of a high-tech system here to the right. So usually when you have a high-tech system, the input options are driving by a joystick or a lever and a wheel. So here I think it's a lever and wheel type option. This over here would be for gas and brake potentially. And then this input over here would be for steering. And this person would drive into the vehicle with their power wheelchair and drive from their chair. So that is an example of what a high-tech system might look like. And here would be the gear shift selector over here, this unit. This gentleman here is an amputee with this little baby. So he uses hand controls, and then this on the steering wheel there are different forms of spinner knobs is what we call them, but they can look very different. This is an example of a spinner knob. And usually when we recommend a hand control for a client, then we also recommend something on this steering wheel because they're only using it with one hand. So this just facilitates the turns. And this one specifically has buttons on here, and those will operate secondary controls such as your turn signals, your windshield wipers, your horn, cruise control potentially. The shop in the back, they'll check for compatibility, and it just depends on vehicles specifications. And here to the right is another hand control. And again, that's a more basic form. You would push, and then this lever here would rotate down, and you would twist for gas for that one. This is something unique. Not a lot of CDRS locations have this piece of equipment available. This is called an acceleration ring. So you would press this ring in here, and that is your gas. And then this over here, this lever, you would push it down, and that's your brake. We've had people to fly into our company to utilize this because we have this available in one of our vehicles. And we are one of the very few locations that has this as an option to even look at, to train with. And then over here is another form of the hand control. This has an electrical component. The gas is actually electric. And then again, it has a rod going to the brake. So this is just a different option. It's not floor mounted. It's actually mounted onto the steering wheel column. And there are certainly pros and cons to both of those. And then if we wanted to do install only, part of what we do in our evaluation, if someone does need equipment, we write a prescription. So just like a medication, this is a piece of medical equipment. So you actually need a prescription written, and that can be done by a CDRS. So that's something that would be involved in evaluation if someone were to need it. But in order to get a piece of equipment installed, you have to have that prescription with that equipment on it, or you have to have it as a restriction on your valid current license, driver's license. Oh, there we go. And so I did this page as just additional resources. So there's the NMETA website, and ADED is where you can locate driver rehab specialists and different driving rehab programs based off of what you're looking for. And then I did add DARS on there. So Department of Aging and Rehab Services. We utilize them extensively, and it's interesting how many people come to us and don't even know of the services that are offered there, but we get a lot of referrals from DARS. They do help fund driving evaluations, driver training, and potentially vehicle modifications too, depending on eligibility criteria, etc. I know with DARS, you do have to have that vocational goal. So someone has to be wanting to work or pursue school. And then if driving is a barrier to obtaining, employment, then they could potentially cover our services. So we do work a lot with DARS clients, and we are a vendor of DARS. With that being said, DARS does have their own state vocational rehab in Fisherville, Virginia. And so they'll typically try to get a client to go there first. And it is certainly appropriate for certain people. What they offer there is more extensive, it's more intensive, it's training every day. And so for, like I said, sometimes after an eval, we may recommend, hey, maybe you should capitalize on these services available. Maybe we wouldn't be able to meet those needs, those intensive needs here at our facility. And if this is an option for you, we'll recommend that someone maybe attend a program like that versus ours. For us, if we recommend driver training, if we do think somebody has the potential for driving, our training schedules usually look like 2 days a week, maybe for a few hours, each of those days. And so it's a little more modified. DARS does that have that option to have that more intensive training. And but really it's about consistency. So we do want, that's something we discuss with clients is, hey, what does your schedule look like? Would you be able to come to us a couple of days out of the week? And then if not, we do work with DARS to request maybe travel expenses or lodging expenses if that's needed, but it's a case by case situation. So, all right, I have my chat thing minimized here. Did we have any questions?
Yeah, so Amanda, thank you. That was super information. I'm going to stop recording now.
Okay.